All right, we're live. Hello, hope everyone's doing well today and things are kind to you. So, we're going to talk about White Fragility some more. This is video number 8. I am up to let's check it out, page 102. And some pretty heavy reading today, I have to say. Some pretty heavy reading. So I'm just going to talk about some of the notes that I have written down here, and maybe expound on it a little bit as I read them. The first thing that I read that was talked about is how to interrupt individualism for white people. We have to interrupt the idea that we're not part of a collective unit. White people love individualism, and to think of each other as a collective group of white people is something that we really don't like. White people must examine their deeper feelings on black people, for these feelings can seep out without our awareness and hurt people that we love. We really have to examine, like, deep down how we feel about other races, and really challenge that, because in times of stress, in times of anger, these feelings sometimes seep out, and it's not good in the way they come out. So there really wasn't a thing called whiteness until we created blackness. And we created blackness to justify slavery and to make our consciences okay with it by making black people inferior to white people. So there was really no need to have the term whiteness or blackness until slavery. The concepts can't exist without each other, so there can't be a whiteness without a blackness, and vice versa. Without making one race inferior, you can't justify the treatment of that race. This mindset, even though we don't consciously are aware of it, or maybe we are, and it still infects white people even today. So they talked. Robin DiAngelo talked about affirmative action, and affirmative action is something that people don't really understand, or they make assumptions about affirmative action, that there's no like quotas and things of that nature. Affirmative action was just a tool to ensure that the qualified minority applicants are given the same opportunities as white people. There were like no quotas. White women had benefited the most from affirmative action, actually. And originally and legally, it was only applied for state and government agencies. But affirmative action now, no one talks about it, and it's basically not done now. It's basically gone. Yet white people still believe that affirmative action is happening all the time. But I want to just reiterate, it was just to help qualified minorities have the same opportunities. There's like no quotas or anything like that. White flight tends to happen when a neighborhood only becomes like 7% black. That was shocking for me. We criticize black people much more harshly by every measure. Anti-blackness is rooted in lies and in deep, deep guilt. So it's easier to ignore something when we feel guilty about it. White collective hates blackness for it reminds our ability and in guilt of perpetrating immeasurable harm to other people. So, one thing that I was challenged on, um, a lot of white people say things about sports figures and black individuals that are very successful, that are millionaires, and they talk about them as being ungrateful. Ungrateful black millionaires is what a lot of white people say or think when successful black people speak up. So when sports figures speak up about inequality and different things like that, it's this idea that white people want to say, oh, they're just being ungrateful, they're millionaires, why do they have to say anything? And I have to admit that maybe in the past, not maybe, I admit that maybe I've said something like this in the past where, people are talking about racial issues and they're multi-millionaires, and I'm like, I had a hard time with that, and I realized that that's definitely deeply rooted, like it's bad. That the trigger of white rage, is black advancement. Does your media reinforce negative stereotypes? So it talks about the movie Blindside and how Blindside reinforces all of these horrible negative stereotypes about black people, the black community, black parents, black children, black youth. And we have to look at our media that we're consuming and think, like, is this representing a group of people correctly? And trying to get away from media that represents white people as the savior of black people. Whites expect racial comfort and become less tolerant of racial stress. So white people have not had racial stress, and so when they're just barely challenged on race things, they'll get upset like at the drop of a hat because they have white fragility, but they never have had this racial stress. Coded language is that race problems is what they have and not what whites have. But whites, share the burden of the issue. We white people don't have experience with racial stress. And then it talks about habitus, a person's internalized awareness of their status as well as responses to the status of others. And I'm going to read more about that tomorrow. So you have to be aware of our own status and then the status of others, and make sure that we're not thinking of us up here while other people are down here. We need to correct that. All right, today I was a little bit all over the place, but it was a good read today. I enjoyed the section today. So tomorrow I'll start with page 102, and I think I'm on the 5th section of the audiobook, so I think I'll probably have like 4 more sections left, possibly 4 more days worth left, and then I'm going to reread the book. Okay. All right, see you all tomorrow.